working in one of the most extreme and remote areas in the world. The temperatures are going to be pretty high. It's going to be hot and dry out there. Water is absolutely critical to your survival in this environment. There's very little fresh water that you will find out there in this environment. So you must take additional water with you each day. You're going to be issued with a survival kit. Your only mode of communication will be a satellite phone, and you will also have an emergency beacon. For the teams that are in the field, please take out UHF radios. This will be a way for you to communicate with each other when you're close by, and also with the helicopter pilot.
The Bush Blitz expedition is taking place in the heart of the Gibson Desert, south of the Great Sandy Desert, north of the Great Victoria Desert. Base camp is set up at Kiura, a small town of 170 residents. It has been described as the most isolated Aboriginal community of Australia.
We're far from anywhere. The closest neighbours are 100 to 150 kilometres away. The closest town is Alice Springs, and that's roughly 700 kilometres away.
It is said that the last nomadic Aboriginals settled here. They were also one of the last to have encountered European settlers. The Australian government has been working with Aboriginal groups to identify traditional lands. On September 10th, 2014, the Kiura territory was declared an Indigenous protected area. It is now governed and protected by the Aboriginal community.
It's a really strong way of recognising Aboriginal people's ownership of their own land and their independence in taking on a project to manage their land. It's a partnership with the government, where the government provides resources and funds, and both sides are winning because Aboriginal people's cultural and environmental needs to look after country are being met, as well as the government's needs for conserving country.
Interest in the holistic approach of Aboriginal life is gaining momentum in our modern world. A vision that takes into account all aspects of humankind: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, family life, and culture. Their ancestral and mystical traditions passed down orally from generation to generation intrigue us, as if we have lost something essential. Their unique arts have been inspired by nature and today are recognized worldwide. Nature is also their ally in the creation of tools and instruments, such as the didgeridoos. The trunks are tunneled out by a miniature army of termites. The inimitable sounds created by these instruments are a symbol of the people, a call for respect. Today, with over 60 protected Indigenous areas throughout Australia, their ancestral knowledge and understanding is beginning to find recognition. The zone at Kiura covers 45,867 square kilometers, an area larger than Switzerland.
We asked scientists to make us a map, to show us the biggest black hole for information in the country. And this was it. This was the red-hot centre of the unknown. This is probably the biggest black hole that we have on those maps that we've done. At about the same time, the Aboriginal people said, we want to make an Indigenous protected area. We want to protect this land. We want to manage it well. And it just came together like this perfect marriage between what the Aboriginal people wanted and what the scientists wanted, which was to know more.
The Bush Blitz expedition is an alliance between the indigenous community and scientists. They will explore, map and identify plants, larvae, spiders, insects, reptiles and birds, with the goal to find out how this land has adapted to such extreme conditions.
3/4 of the species in Australia aren't known. So when I tell people that, they're dumbfounded. They can't believe that we don't know all the species. But the truth of the matter is, we don't know most of the species on this planet.
The bush is made up of red sand dunes, and despite the scorching desert heat, they are covered with a surprising amount of green plants.
Compared to a lot of the deserts of the world, this one looks really very green.
The fauna and flora are for the most part endemic and have learned to survive over thousands of years in this particularly arid landscape. In summer, temperatures vary from 32 to 52 degrees Celsius.
Our deserts are defined as being areas of less than 250 millimetres of rainfall per year. This desert would probably get around 220, 230, but it's never guaranteed.
The Blitz means a swift and intensive team effort. In this type of landscape, an expedition of this scale requires substantial resourcing.
We're covering about 4 million hectares of land in one of the most remote places on the planet. And the only way to do this, there are no roads, so the only way we can get around is by helicopter.
While 2 helicopters explore the edges of the reserve, down on the ground, not far from base camp, the first 4-wheel drive expedition leaves for the field. Nolia, Sally and Roma are directing one of the operations. They know the bush better than anybody, although they usually get around on foot. The team have traveled less than 2 kilometers from base camp and already have to call for assistance.
This vehicle is bogged on top of the dune here, so we're going to try and pull it out.
The Aboriginal women find the situation entertaining.
How many crab are there? Just should be one more. There, he's got it. You owe.
We got it out.
We'll go to the Amaku side.
Amaku side.
Dr. Alan Yen is a renowned entomophagy specialist, the art of eating insects and other small animals. He is with a group in search of a larvae highly appreciated by the indigenous people.
Yours, Maisie? Okay, so which tree?
Longkonba.
Unkuba. Okay, where's that?
Longkonba, makukulat na makul.
Okay.
Kurno what the ala ngangon.
Okay, you show me where to go. Where you're going.
Yaka, kirpang hawan kirna bika. Yo, wala bro na dara. Kunta. Nang kadbo ko jiko. Makula de yura ko. Westa longkonba.
So what do you look for? See Marco. Marco, but so you look for the root here?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the root. So this is the Marco inside here.
Like this. Just a minute. Now you can see the root coming. And then you'll see the small grub in the root.
Swollen, yeah. So the swollen bit is where the Marco, the grub.
This is a grub shoot.
Yes. There's a Marco, is it? Yes.
This is a grub. We look for trees like this and then we dig under them. And now you'll see the grubs. This one I dug up a while ago. We grab it and put it out like this.
Nice one.
This tree is the sandhill wattle.
Unkumba. This is what the locals here call a marku. A marku is a Western Desert term for edible grub, and it's commonly called the witchetty grub. And they live in the root of these different plants. This is an acacia, and so it's been dug out, and this is the root, and you can see the grub inside. And if we can knock this on a piece of wood, try and get the grub out. You can see it emerging now. And carefully pull it out. So that's the grub. And these turn into, the term they use here is pinta.
Butterfly.
Which is, they call it a butterfly, but it's actually a moth, but it's the same term. So after summer rains, these come out and they fly off.
What did they carry the grubs with? In a wooden dish. They used to carry the dishes like this. They used to put water in the dishes too and take them. My mother and grandmother used to do it like this. When I was little, I used to see them do this. I used to think, oh, okay, this is how the older generation used to live. My mother and grandmother, my family.
These witchetty grubs are very important food for the Aborigines here, especially in the desert area, because they're available the whole year round. So it's a reliable food source. So when it gets a bit dry and so on, and they have trouble finding kangaroos or lizards and so on, they can rely on these. We think they might live like this.
Might live for a little bit longer.
Yeah, 2 years possibly, before they from egg through to the moth. Could be 2 years, could be more. We don't know. Ah, yes. Can I take a photo of that? Sorry, yes. Okay, this is very important.
like this. They poke it in the head, and they put it like this and carry it like this. Sometimes they put it in the chest. They carry it like this before, long time.
Yes.
They used to carry it like this.
We rely on them to first help us find the grubs and then secondly give us any information about the grubs. For example, when they occur, how they find them, look for the signs when they're looking for the grubs, how they dig them up, and also whether they've got preference for different grubs.
Back at base camp, the researchers study some of the specimens collected throughout the day.
Good meal.
Yeah.
Josephine's family were amongst some of the last Aboriginal nomads. She recalls the true science of the bush that her parents passed down to her. She is a little anxious about flying in a helicopter. Josephine will join the reptile team in the field, who are already on the lookout.
It's a military dragon. They're an annual species, so they only really live for about 12 months. They're ant specialists, and for these particular ones, having a resource like ants is one that's not sort of used by many other species. So it's something that allows them to exist right across the arid zone.
I followed the tracks and I found this one. I looked all around for the tracks and then I saw him. Lunkata, blue tongue.
So he just walking and you grab him?
Yes, I took him. Dinner. I'll hit him and then take him and cook him over there and cook him in the fire. I'll cook this meat, Lunkata, the blue tongue. It's good meat. I'll eat him after.
Before becoming Josephine's lunch, Rebecca wants to document the find with modern techniques.
Snout vent length is 245. So if you can hold that for me. Ready? So we take a little bit of the tail, a tissue sample.
Yeah.
If reptiles can survive in this dry zone, it is partly because the desert is exceptionally green.
People have a perception of deserts, like all deserts, as being rolling sand dunes devoid of vegetation. But in Australia, we have the oldest deserts in the world. They're classified as about 1 million years old. So the vegetation we have here is incredibly well adapted to the desert environment. In an area like this, you wonder why all the vegetation just doesn't die completely. Each of them has different adaptations. Some will store water, some have very, very good root systems. And a dune such as this, if you bury a hand down into the sand, is degrees cooler, only centimetres below the surface of the soil.
This is a desert covered with plants and animals, and it's not your typical sand dunes. The dunes here are actually harboring life. The dunes are holding moisture, they're holding plants, the plants have insects. Insects are being fed on by the birds and by the lizards. It's a whole complex food web. The plants in the desert here are pollinated by insects. Without the insects, the plants can't reproduce. A lot of insects here live on specific plant species, so those plants are like an island. It's an oasis, in this desert. And so you have a whole community living on one plant. And then when they reproduce, the next generation might fly up, get caught in this wind, head down a bit, who knows how far, several kilometers, and happen to land on the right house plant, and then they can start the cycle again.
In the meantime, Barbara, an arachnologist or spider specialist, is exploring the edges of Lake Mackay, better known as Kiura by the locals. It is over 75 kilometers from base camp at Kiura. During her career, Barbara has described over 600 new species. Yesterday, she visited the lake with some locals to set up some spider traps.
Yesterday we went out with the Aboriginals, and they were a bit scared, and they said that's magic here because they think that the souls of the deceased ones are going there. So, and it feels a bit like that. It's a kind in between heaven and earth, so therefore they don't go that much on the lake.
It's really hard to pick up. It's in the salt.
She knows that no animal can survive on this gigantic salt crust. It's on the edge of the lake that Barbara hopes to find life and new species of spiders.
At the moment there are about 3,500 described, and we expect about 8,500 at least. So that's a male wolf spider. This is a spider that has never been discovered to now and lives here in the desert. It's in burrows, so they can survive there when it's hot. It is surprising because it's a desert. And normally if you are in a desert, you think that
that there is nothing.
Underground, spiders are not the only ones to take shelter from the scorching desert heat. Honey ants, often illustrated in local paintings, are a living reserve of protein and sugars. The Aboriginal peoples appreciate them for their exquisite honey taste.
Ah, look, there are honey ants coming out of this hole. There's ants down there? We're going to dig here.
Sometimes they will dig up to 1.2 meters below the crust in search of the sweet caviar. The elders still offer them to their families as a tradition. Conscious that their ancestral know-how is being lost, they do their best to pass on the knowledge to the younger generation.
As for the sugar, the women pull the best of the ants from the sandy desert cellar. Easy to prepare, simply pinch the ant with your fingers and burst the honey abdomen with your teeth.
Today, the Bush Blitz expedition provides a perfect opportunity for the Western study of traditional bush foods. The desert hides several sources of provisions for those who know how to find them.
We look around the sandhill wattle trees and think, oh, this tree has grubs. Then we dig and might find many grubs in the roots of the tree. We might just start digging and see the grubs after digging. Occasionally, the whole tree might be pushed over and we can lift it up and gather the grubs and move on to another bush and dig more. We might find that there are not so many grubs. Then we just head for home. Sometimes we may decide to cook the grubs in the fire and then take them home. If it becomes too late in the afternoon, we may just decide to go home.
The witchetty grubs are very important food here, and especially for children, because in the olden times, except for mother's breast milk, there was no dairy products. So children actually needed to get other source of things like calcium, and we think things like witchetty grub provided that, along with good source of protein and unsaturated fats.
The dominant vegetation out here is what we call spinifex grasslands, and this is a spinifex, generally short, clumped, often very sharp, nasty grass, and they are generally spiky so they don't get eaten by anything.
The Aboriginal people harvest the grains of spinifex, a grass seed, to make bush bread.
Spinifex grasslands occupy the driest, hottest, most extreme environments in Australia.
Spinifex can grow up to 2 meters high, 5 meters in diameter, and their roots can plunge 30 meters underground,
enabling the plants to access very deep water, which is very advantageous for the desert conditions out here.
When deemed necessary and to stop spinifex from dominating the landscape, the local Aboriginal people turn to their eternal ally, fire. Government authorities often fought against this method, believed to be dangerous, but today their position has evolved. They now understand that patchwork burning is the result of an intimate knowledge of the land.
We make fires to encourage the growth of food plants, like bush tomatoes. We also make fires to encourage the growth of green grass so that the kangaroos can eat. The country becomes new from the blackened earth.
The Aboriginal people are excellent harvesters and hunters. Lizards are a popular choice for lunch. Patchwork burning is also a hunting technique. The animals run from the flames and become an easy catch. It is also the best way to reduce the fuel load that ignites when lightning strikes, creating devastating bushfires. Intense, spontaneous fires tend to kill the plants. Whereas patchwork burning will spare the plant's vital functions. Dr. Robert Boyd is an ecologist who specializes in bushfires.
Guessing where we burned was somewhere around.
He suspects that spinifex produces a chemical substance in order to dominate the landscape, one that poisons or suffocates other plants in the vicinity.
They are able to suppress other plants from growing. Just below the soil surface, there can be up to 20, 25, 30 even different species of plant existing as seeds, just waiting for the right conditions to happen. When you get a fire come through in these spinifex grasslands, the spinifex grasses are killed, and all of a sudden there's the competition is removed, there's nutrients released in the ash into the soil, competition for water is reduced, and when the rains come along, these other plants are able to germinate and grow, and so all of a sudden the desert becomes a garden. High-intensity fires cause a lot more soil heating, and seeds of all these plant species that are existing in the soil under these high temperature conditions, a high proportion of them are killed off, and there's just no food around for Aboriginal people to eat. So fire and humans really go hand in hand in spinifex landscapes. I think this seed has been cooked by the fire. I think it's dead. The fire was too hot, or this was too close to the surface.
When the sun goes down, the work doesn't stop. Scientists are also trying to understand the secret life of plants that hide millions of years of adaptation deep in their seeds. A new morning has broken in the heart of the Gibson Desert, and the adventure continues.
Working with the Aboriginals it's really, it's humbling in a lot of ways, because they've been living here on this land that we look at and we think it's harsh or inhospitable, and they've been living here for 60,000 odd years. They know how to survive here. They know how to find food where we think there's no food. We don't see water, they find water. They're resourceful. They're brilliant at tracking animals. You know, this is their land. They're part of it. They know how to live here, and you kind of feel like a child when you come to a place like this and you see how adept they are and how little we know.
What's the name? Barrawitja or Tipper? Tipper?
Yeah.
Tipper. There's about 4 or 5 varieties of these grevilleas, honey grevilleas people call them sometimes, and inside these flowers will be the honeydew, sweet honeydew, and that's what bush people used to soak and make a drink, especially for kids. So it was like an ancient day soft drink. You'll get some honeydew in the middle. Yeah, just suck on it. People might have been materialistically poor or had minimal sort of wealth in that sense, but as far as ecological knowledge, they're extremely rich and wealthy. The most knowledgeable people about this sort of desert ecology are the Aboriginal people.
The Aboriginal perspective on life on, say, something like land management is that it's not a separate thing that you do, and it's not a job that you might go out and do between 9 and 5 today. Looking after country is a holistic part of their life. It's all bound up in their responsibilities to country, to each other, to the Jukuba or Dreamtime, their religion, all mixed in together rather than separate buckets like we might do.
Writing was not originally part of Australian Aboriginal culture. Their educational tradition was to gain knowledge through true life field experiences. Our Western approach is more theoretical. We read up on a theme, we classify, analyze, illustrate and record. Oh. The team's photographer is in high demand by the scientists. Each of them wants to immortalize their treasures in front of his powerful macro lens. Patience is his secret.
Look at that rearing up. That's sharp there. Try to...
On the other side of the reserve, at the extreme northeast of the Kiura Indigenous protected area, a whole sector is considered unknown territory. The entomologist Nick Tatarnik has made a totally unexpected, exceptional discovery.
Now this is beautiful. This is completely different vegetation that we've been seeing everywhere else. This is, all these plants are dependent on fresh water, it looks like, and they're pretty lucky to be here in the middle of the desert.
When we were looking on the map, we did not see this. I had no idea there'd be a wetland in the middle of the desert. Wait. Did you see that? Oh, it's not. Oh. Got a bird's nest, which means that things are nesting here next to the water, and I don't think it's rained much recently, so the last big rain, I think, was 3 or 4 years ago. The last thing I expected was to be standing in water in the middle of the desert. Isn't that brilliant? Yeah, it sure beats with swatting flies and spitting dust. So the botanists are gonna have some algae to press. We picked all our sites from satellite maps and geo maps and vegetation maps, and we tried to pick areas that we thought would harbor diversity. Lucky we were using helicopters to do our surveys, and we spotted the real oasis in the middle of the desert. And We had no clue it was there. It was teeming with life. It just shows how massive this desert is and how little we know it. Life persists, even in places that you think are unlivable. Brings you hope. You know, you just have to wait for the rain.
Two weeks of research, 65 hours of helicopter flight, and over 100 explored sites has enabled the team to identify 375 newly recorded species within the Indigenous protected area. Among them, 52 are potential new species to science: insects, spiders, 13 plants, and even a snail. If humans were more humble, they would invest more to better understand the invisible bonds that unite us with other forms of life on Earth. Links that enable life, that give us life. It is no longer a secret. Everything is interconnected.